This is going to be part 5 of sleep deprivation and gang stalking, the last part for now. I want to come back at a later date, maybe talk about new tactics if the tactics continue to change. Also, I would like to at least once go through a typical night in more detail, that is, take the log from a particular night and actually go through the whole night and explain things, what they mean. I'd like to do something like that in the future, but I left off last time with a question, basically something like, so we've got our hypothetical 6-man sleep dep team in the early morning hours of any given night. What would we find if we looked into their personal lives and their character and their history? Would we find a bunch of career criminals? Who would we find? And the truth of the matter is that if you're not familiar with the psychology of gang stalking, you're going to stumble onto some pretty disturbing truths. Namely that, and I could say this based on my experience with full confidence. It's not something that I often say, that I can speak with full confidence, but my experience is solid in this case. I hope you won't be too disappointed if I tell you that our 6-man team, a hypothetical team or lineup on any given night, is almost always made up of ordinary, decent human beings. Not murderers, not rapists, not career criminals, but more often than not, in fact almost always, it's going to be made up of ordinary, decent human beings. Now this, of course, brings up the question, well, why? Why would? If this is true, if what you say is true, and the people engaging in the activities that you've described up until now in the first couple of videos, if they are ordinary, decent human beings, why are they doing this? Now, that's actually one of the central themes I'm going to be going back to again and again throughout all my videos on gang stalking. Why are people doing this? Who is doing it? And more importantly, most importantly of all, why are they doing it? And the answers are pretty disturbing. Well, depending on your point of view. And so, because I'm going to be coming back to this, I just want to do a kind of a brief attempt at an answer to this question. And I want to start off by completely ruling out, for the sake of this argument, by completely ruling out maybe the top 2 guesses that people might have. Those not familiar with the psychology of gang stalking would definitely say, well, either they're getting paid to do it, or there's a cause. You can call this almost cause and cash. They got to be doing it for one of those 2 reasons. You're the worst person ever, or they're getting paid to do it. Just for the sake of argument, I'm ruling out both of those, because I think that I can convince, maybe not in this particular video, but given more time in the future, I can convincingly show that you don't need either one of those to adequately explain why these ordinary, decent people, and I speak with full confidence when I say that, why these ordinary, decent people are participating in the type of activities that I describe and other stuff that's done during the daytime. So the first of these other reasons, the non-ruled out reasons, is a pretty powerful one, and that is that gang stalking, at least right now, is an open secret. Nobody is talking about it. It's protected by a code of silence, and gang stalkers benefit from the protection of the authorities. So our ordinary, decent guys who are part of this rotation, they will have spent probably many hours online watching you being gang-stalked by somebody else, and whatever it is that they see there online, and especially who they see participating and the resources that they see being used against you, convinces them utterly that there's no way this guy's ever going to find out who is doing this, and certainly there will never be any consequences for our actions, they think. That's something that has to be considered right off the bat. Another big thing is, I guess this category you would call it feeling, and that is that guys are doing this because of the way it makes them feel. And the way that it makes them feel is highly addictive. You can talk about things like a power trip, feeling, special, feeling like a secret agent, being able to get a thrill by being allowed to treat someone in a way you're not normally allowed to treat people in this civil society. That appeals to a disturbingly large amount of people. It's almost as if some people are getting in touch with their inner Cossack that's been dormant because we live in a modern civil society. And that kind of leads into the next thing, which is, once again, based on my very solid experience, especially the body language that I see in the participants, I see that people get an unbelievably deep sense of satisfaction from being part of these types of activities. A type of satisfaction that they perhaps have not experienced in their lives. You also have the idea that we all, in this civil society, we all have a lot of repressed anger, aggression, hate, you name it. And what the target is an officially designated scapegoat, which, people are allowed to dump all of the aforementioned repressed tendencies upon. Here's a person you're allowed to kick around, you're allowed to step on, you're allowed to throw every negative, all the negative natural byproducts of our minds and just take it all and throw it at that designated target. And it's encouraged, actually, by the very state itself. For me, one of the biggest reasons why guys are doing what I've described in sleep deprivation videos is a very simple thing: social influences, specifically through social media. It can often be a very dehumanizing experience, especially with sleep deprivation, knowing that, here's someone parked 20 feet away and they're torturing you. You just want to go to sleep, you're exhausted, and they're connected to that remote neural monitoring, and they just keep hitting that horn every time you're right about to fall asleep, and it just can sometimes fill you with so much anger. It can be so painful emotionally, and it's so hard not to regard the person carrying this out with anger or hate. But one must always remember that these gang stalkers are never alone. They are connected to an online group who is encouraging them, praising them, egging them on, inciting them to do what they do. And that's something that unfortunately gets overlooked even by targets. I just want to make a brief mention that about this idea of Gangstalking 2.0. I see a lot of talk about Gangstalking, which is actually outdated. We're past the age of perps and victims, paid groups of perps who show up in a town at 3 o'clock in the morning looking like guys that stepped out of a Quentin Tarantino movie. That's over. Those guys still exist, But the most important aspect now, the most important factor in Gangstalking period, Gangstalking 2.0 let's call it, is that vast online audience who are following these targeting situations, and they create a 24-hour-a-day interactive social media extravaganza slash reality show slash sport out of the target individual situation. And that's very important to understand when you're looking at this behavior, especially coming from seemingly ordinary, decent human beings. And I mentioned before, I think in the first reason, that they almost have a sense of immunity because, well, hey, if the police are supporting this, and someone in the federal government somewhere is supporting this and helping out with resources and technology and in the whole social media mess, you have this idea of the ultimate authority, and this is what really messes with the morality of the situation, especially the participants who I describe, and it's accurate, completely normal, decent human beings individually. These guys are not answering to the police or a judge or a jury or to your pleading or to some moral code that they learned, when they were kids. They answer to an online mob, and that changes everything, including their behavior. And another one I want to mention this briefly at the end. It's also something that gets overlooked when people are looking for reasons why gang stalkers, in this case specifically people doing sleep deprivation, what they often overlook in trying to figure out why is that, the technology itself. Once again, calling on my experience and observations over the years, people really are truly fascinated and enthralled by this technology. They are standing in line for their turn to use it, saying, no, I want to wake him up next. No, I want to set off my car alarm the next time he's happy. They're falling over themselves and standing in line, waiting for their turn to use this technology, because it's like a toy to them. And I'm about to say this, and I don't want it to come out the wrong way. I'm known for sarcasm at times, and I promise that what I'm about to say is not an exaggeration. It's, some of these people feel like this technology gives them godlike powers to just reach into someone's mind the way that they do. And so those are a couple of the reasons that I've been kicking around, that I believe that not just our hypothetical sleep deprivation crew or rotation on any given night, but any of the people who participate in these activities 24 hours a day. These are some of my ideas about why they do what they do, and I hope I convinced you that they don't need to be paid a cent when you look at all those other factors. People don't need to be paid a cent to sleep deprive you or to do any of the stuff that gang stalkers do.